It's college football season, man.
It is. The week. We're back. Got games playing. It's August 30th, 2021. Welcome aboard, folks. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, and we are episode 508.
Okay.
508. Take your word for it. Take my word for it. Hope you had a great weekend. But yes, college football kicks off this weekend. That means for those of you that hate college football and basically all team sports, you'll start fast forwarding for the first 5 or 10 minutes of our podcast as we talk about college football. But let's be honest, most of you probably fast forward through the first 5 or 10 minutes anyway until we get into our groove.
That's what they love.
Yeah. This last weekend was, I didn't do much training. I did a whole lot of yard work. This last weekend, you got a long ride in, but it was hot. It was very hot this last weekend, but it looks like with, unfortunately, I guess a couple hurricanes coming through, and Chuck Newth got married.
Yeah,
therefore,
congrats, Chucky.
The spell's been broken. He sent me a text yesterday with really an awesome picture of he and his wife, Amanda. They get married on Saturday. And the Newth kind of spell, in my opinion, has been broken. He's been our team for, I think, the last 3 or 4 years. And every race that he goes to, it's hot. And when I say hot, it's like way hot, like unseasonably, unpredictably hot. No matter what, no matter where it is, no matter where you go, it's the curse. It's the Chuck curse. And I have predicted on our Zoom calls and our active athlete page that once he gets married, the spells will be broken. And he sent me a text on Saturday, and he sent me a picture, and I said, and just like that, the spell hath been broken. And I pulled up the forecast for later this week because we're supposed to get a bunch of rain tonight and tomorrow, I guess, from Hurricane Ida. And the rest of the week, it's like low 80s, 60s, and it'd be nice, cool, and crisp. I was like, dude, I'm telling you, Ironman Chattanooga, it's going to be perfect weather. The spell has been broken.
Let's hope so.
Because if not, it's going to be a brutal day.
Yeah, because it could easily be brutal here. He's doing Chattanooga, I take it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
you sound.
No, I don't
it's
care.
Broken. I'm telling you, the spell has been broken.
I'm fully
He's got a
prepared.
wedding band on, so I'm telling you, I think the spell has been broken.
Well, I'll tell you what. Much like last time I did this race, I did not prepare for the swim because it was a downstream current. This year, I'm
Quote,
not taking
unquote.
it for granted. And I'm not taking your prediction for granted. I'm just training as if though it is going to be a hot race.
Yeah, and most people have
everything
had no
will be
choice.
a bonus after that. But
Exactly. Most people had no choice to train in the heat right now anyway.
yeah, well, it's true. But mentally, you can't bank on. Can't bank on. I hope everybody out there that's in the hurricane path. I don't watch news or TV and stuff. Somebody told me last night, it's like, it's coming your way. Like the remnants are coming through here, I guess.
We're going to get all that rain, I think, tonight.
But I hope everybody's okay. I know we have some athletes down there.
Yeah, we had a lot of athletes. And
looks pretty wicked, as always.
Yeah, so take care of yourselves, hunker down, board up those windows, and, turn on the candle, turn off the lights, and listen to the smooth, crisp tones of Mike and I's podcast. But no, in all seriousness, stay safe. For those of you that are, it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. So we appreciate you tuning in for today. We cover it all. We cover triathlon, we cover life, we cover everything in between. We will do swim, bike, run specific podcasts. We'll do race recaps, race previews, have on a guest whenever we feel like it. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, best friends, athletes ourselves, we just kind of hop on the cast and have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, what our athletes are going through. We work with a wide range of athletes from beginners to Kona qualifiers all over the world that are always kind of going through the same thing. That's what a lot of people say when they listen to our podcast is that I feel like you were speaking to me. That's because, we're all going through this thing called life. We're all going through training. We're all having our ups and downs. We're all trying to figure things out. We're type A in a lot of ways, so we're never truly satisfied. So we're always trying to get better. And so we'll use the pulse of that and also our community on Facebook, which you can search Crushing Iron Group, be a part of that. And we'll use that to drive the topic of the conversation for the day. But that's it. We just sit back and relax, and hopefully you can take something from our podcast that's consumable, apply it to your life, not just in the way that we say it, but in your own way. Make it your own journey because it's yours after all. We don't do any sponsors. We don't do any ads, but we have one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Well, it's working for me.
Yeah? You happy and healthy?
I feel like,
some days you're grumpy.
I'm healthy.
I was going to say.
Let's not go too far with the happy thing.
Let's not go way overboard.
It's sort of, I think just generally like pretty solid, I don't think, I'm over the moon, happy about everything, but I'm pretty content.
I don't know that I've ever known you to be happy and over the moon about everything. I've known you for 8 years, and I don't ever recall a moment where I feel like that was true.
Well, I can say that about you, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
we've always got something. Like usually
just
just
a little bit under
ends
the
of the
moon.
spectrum. Yeah, listen, we don't like to get. Listen, there's no reason to get to the moon, okay, or over it, because then what's left?
left? Yeah.
Exactly, what's left? Like you and I are, we like to stay even keel. We don't try to get way too up or way too down. We just try to get and stay even keel.
I mean, after some long workouts this weekend, that stuff gets reiterated in my head so hard, the even keel
stay
thing.
even?
Yeah, because, man, you can go through a myriad of emotions on long rides and long runs, and you can't, you can't get swept up in any of it, because it's amazing how things change out there sometimes. I had a lot of people telling me, it's like, especially this late in training for a lot of people that, I just didn't feel it till like 3 hours into that ride. It's like, think about that, and I think, as you go through taper, obviously, I think, from my experience and probably yours, is like when you get on that bike out of the swim, you just feel like ripping up everything, and that's going to be one of the challenges a lot of people face, is just like to be able to kind of rein it in a little bit, because your legs will feel amazing. In my experience, they usually do feel pretty good coming out of the water, through after tapering and everything like that. But in the meat of this training, with all the fatigue that we're carrying, it really does take a while to kind of open things up, and we've addressed that last time a little bit. But
it's Jekyll and Hyde season, baby. I mean, it is like, and that's, I'm only like a third of the way through, like digging through Training Peaks from the weekend, like Friday through Sunday sessions and weekly summaries. But almost like, I would say half the people that are in like a bigger build, like a 70.3 or an Ironman build, where there's lots of hours that are accumulating, not just from like Friday to Sunday, but like they've been doing consistent sessions for like 2 or 3 weeks, either Saturday or Sunday or vice versa. They'd say, God, worst ride I've ever had in my life. Don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I'm so discouraged. Next day, I feel like Superman. And like like 24 hours later, having done more the day before, listen, we say this all the time, and I know, and like even in like the thick of it, and you and I both do it as athletes ourselves, like we can say don't be a prisoner of the moment, but you were still always prisoner of the moment. And it's okay to be there for a minute. Just don't lock the door, okay, and stay there forever. Like just walk out the next day. But we all do that in training, no matter what. Like you said, you've had a lot of like discouraging workouts, and you're like, and then like the next day, like I'm feeling pretty good. Like, like you just can't take everything, because we all have those days. Like, not to derail like the trajectory of the podcast, but I was watching the Collins Cup on Saturday. It was an interesting format. I think they way overhyped the televised product of it, with like all these extra things that never really appeared. But it was an interesting format. They basically took like 12 men and I think it was 12 guys, and I believe 12 men and 12 women, some of the best triathletes on the planet, especially for long course athletes. And they did like heats of 3 that they competed against each other. And you saw some of the best athletes. They went to head like the heats of 3. Some of the best athletes that have ever lived. Daniela Reef, she didn't feel very well. Patrick Lange, who's won Kona twice, and some other like very, very top tier athletes have very, very, very subpar days. Do you think that they woke up the next day thinking, I suck. I think I've got to reinvent the wheel. I just really think things are good. No, they probably woke up and looked back at their training, because I'm sure some of them were in like probably a huge Kona block, that there had been in a huge Kona block getting ready for October. Now it's some pushback to next February. Do you think they just got home and like, I think I need to reinvent the wheel. I don't think things are working out. I think I'm not really progressing. No, they just chalk it up to having a bad day, not feeling well, it not being super high priority where they didn't expect to feel fresh. They just showed up because they got an appearance fee. And that was it. So like everyone goes through that. And I do want to say this too, because I wanted to mention at least at some point in the podcast, but on my weekly Zoom call for our active athletes, I predicted that Taylor Knibb, 23-year-old American, would dominate her heat that included Daniela Reef in it. And I got scoffed at. I got laughed at. Yeah. And you know what happened? Dominated.
Dominated.
She dominated the entire field. She was the fastest female athlete by 3 minutes, and she obliterated everyone on the bike course. And you want to know what she was riding, Mike?
A Trek.
A road bike.
A road bike?
A road bike with clip-on bars, because she's an ITU athlete, and she raced Boulder 70.3 a few weeks ago. And some of the other like older, more seasoned female pros were kind of laughing that she was going to ride on a road bike, because it was a pancake flat course. Like, I mean, pancake flat. And they were especially, I think Holly Lawrence was kind of made some comments on one of her interviews on Bob Babbitt's show. Was kind of like, she's kind of naive. She doesn't really know any better. And I'm thinking, like, she's one of the best triathletes on the planet. She just didn't feel like she was going to be comfortable. And like, why hop on a TT bike in a week? Because you just did Montreal, won wire to wire in the ITU grand finale. Why just hop on a TT bike just because, right? And she absolutely obliterated everyone on the bike course on her road bike with clip-on air bars that she rides regularly. I think she said, she was like, I just don't feel comfortable on it. It'd be a brand new bike. Plus my bike sponsor hasn't given me one yet. So I'm just going to ride what I have. And I just think it was a great testament to just a nice friendly reminder to all of us triathletes that it's not the material, it's the motor. Okay. It is 100% the motor. On race day, you might feel overwhelmed and underprepared because you haven't spent or don't have the money to buy these big fancy tri bikes with their all the marketing that goes behind them and the power meters and the disc wheels, but it's the motor that matters most. And she had the motor, and she absolutely obliterated the field. And I predict that if she does 70.3 World Championships in St. George, she will do that exact same thing.
Well, first I was going to ask you, how in the world did you know this? I mean, but then you
know what?
That she was going to crush everybody, and then, but you told us actually because you're an avid listener of the Bob Babbitt show.
No,
clearly
that's definitely not the reason. I don't even think she was on it. But no, I follow the.
It wasn't her.
I follow the ITU circuit, so like I know. And she's which again everyone I think should watch, because it's only $35 for the whole year. It's free, and then you get to watch all the races. But she had a really poor showing in the Olympics in Tokyo. And then absolutely just went after the bike and kind of redeemed herself. And ever since then, I think she's kind of had a chip on her shoulder. Comes across as like a bubbly, super humble, kind of like naive in a way to like, it almost comes off as like she doesn't know any better. So it comes off kind of sometimes like just disrespectful to the other, not just because she's not that attitude, but just kind of like she doesn't know to be in awe, or she doesn't know to be like to take the back seat and think that she can kind of, or think that she should kind of like shy away from these huge names in the sport because she hasn't competed against them. She showed up to Boulder 70.3, and her very first 70.3, I think 3 weeks ago, was in first place, got past. This is the very first 70.3 ever, a week after Tokyo. Then going back to a totally different time zone on a road bike with TT bars, and she got past her first. She wasn't gonna catch her, then got passed again, and then came back and repassed the girl who passed her, which you never see in races, right? Once you usually get passed in the final 5K, it's for good. Like you're not gonna repass. She repassed her I think actually a fellow teammate that trains there in Boulder, took second in 70.3 Boulder, and then went wire to wire in this ITU race in Montreal in the grand finale, swam in the front pack, went away on the bike, so worked alone. And so I was thinking, like, dude, like that, anybody who has that kind of bike power to bike away from the likes of like Flora Duffy and some of the bigger names, I was like, if she shows up, she'll swim front pack and she'll obliterate. So she'll swim alone, which she's used to, and then she'll hop on the bike and she's used to riding alone, and she'll just dominate. And she did. She went absolutely, she absolutely crushed. I think she won her heat by like 14 minutes against some of the best professional athletes in the world. So 23-year-old, I think she's from DC, but I didn't know that, but I predicted it because I think I don't think it's fair to say
Where was this thing?
She's an up-and-comer.
The Collins?
San Marin, which I have zero idea what country that's in, but some beautiful country overseas in Europe.
Oh, okay. So it was in Europe.
Yeah, it was in Europe, and it was
all that travel. That's amazing.
Yeah, like back and forth, and able to do that. And I don't even think she got like much of an appearance fee because she's not even like ranked in like bid. She did win there, and she was the star of. She was the belle of the ball. And so if you haven't kept up with her or track her. And I'm hoping she does 70.3 Worlds in St. George, because I think she will. She's the full package. She can swim the front pack. She will bike away from the whole field. And I just think it's fascinating, one, because it's fun to see an up and comer in the sport do that, but also just to be on a road bike, you know, which is like, you know, the one of the most common questions you and I get as coaches.
We got that Friday, remember?
Yeah.
The guy was here, and he kept asking. We had a hub visit, and he had a road bike with clip-on bar, and he wanted to kind of just get a fit, look, overview kind of thing, and we got him on there, and you know, and then it was like, I said, are you comfortable? And he's like super comfortable in that bike. And I'm like, there's your answer, really. You know, if you've been riding it a long time and you feel good on it. I mean, because think about how much we try to, you know, go around corners to find little speed advantages, but then you're 60 miles into your Ironman ride and you feel terrible because your position is all screwed up or the bike doesn't feel good. And then it's like, that's what I always tell people is, you know, if you're riding a road bike and you're just kind of new in the sport, it's like, should I get the tri, you know, because like it's going to be a big advantage, and it can be once you dial it in, and it, you know, and depending on the courses and all that kind of stuff. And I just don't think it's really worth it if you're comfortable and you're riding. Like, you have to really prove, I guess, to yourself that on your road bike that you're ready to ride a lot, because once you make that switch to tri, then it's another adjustment. Because I remember when I did that, I just hated that. I hated being on a tri bike for months. You know, it could have been partially the fit or whatever, but the whole stiffness of it, the whole dynamics of riding a different kind of like straight ahead bike that doesn't really handle as well, and it's not as flexible, whatever it is. Just bike a lot, whatever feels comfortable.
You do more of something that you like, enjoy, love, and that's more comfortable. I have seen and that's such a great tip, I think, for any athlete, because if you love riding your bike, you're going to ride it more. And you know what creates great fitness in cycling? Riding your bike a lot. You know what tends to, you know, impede progress on the bike? Not biking a lot.
I know.
Or not being on the right saddle, not being on the right fit, being in too aggressive a position. And it's so people just tend to think, oh, I just need to try bikes and make me that much faster. You make yourself faster, right? You make yourself faster. You're the most unaerodynamic thing on your bike. And I've been using this example in the pool because the last two people that have come in for swim analysis, I have been the last, I think 3 out of 5, I haven't even touched their swim stroke. Like none of their early vertical form, none of the actual stroke mechanics. We focused solely on body positioning, because no matter how great your swim stroke is, if you're dragging your entire body through the water like an anchor, it doesn't matter, right? And swimming has so many, so many similarities to cycling. It's not aerodynamics, it's hydrodynamics. So again, it's about the least amount of you in the water versus the most water you can move underneath you. So what I've been focusing on with these athletes is like, I don't want to worry so much about your stroke, because until we can fix your body positioning, it's irrelevant, because all you're doing is trying to fix like a fine-tuned thing that's just going to continue to pull the anchor and the back into your tugboat. And I've been giving this example. It's like taking a person who wants to become like this really, really, really great hill climber. You know, I want to be really great. So, you know, give me a great training plan. I want to hammer the hills. I'm going to put it, you know, I want to add 2 extra rides a week. I'm going to, you know, increase my volume. And then you're like, well, if I'm being honest with you, the best way for you to become a better hill climber, and easiest, probably not the right term, but the most efficient way to become a better hill climber is to probably lose the 75 pounds that you are overweight, right? Like, and that's, I'm not saying that's in a harsh way. I'm saying like dropping 10 pounds of eating clean and being able to cycle more, just doing aerobic work is going to make you a better hill climber, because you're dragging 10 pounds less uphill. Same thing goes for running. A lot of people, even though really not underestimate, but really neglect sometimes, because we all go through fluctuations in weight in our entire life, in our season, either because of medication or because of, you know, depression or things that we don't eat very well, or just general times of the year. You know, the impact that too much weight can have on just your running performance, right? So I give that example because it's like one way to get to a better place that doesn't involve, you know, this like new age, you know, self-improved cycling, you know, program that's, you know, going to make you the best cyclist on the planet. Same thing with running and swimming. It's the simple things that allow you to do things more often. And I just think that's, there's a lot to be said in terms of being comfortable on your bike and wanting to do it more and creating more fitness. And a lot of times, like I'll tell athletes on the weekend ride is like, go ride for 2 to 3 hours on the bike of your choice. Gravel bike, mountain bike, cross bike, tri bike, whatever it is. just go out and ride, because fitness is fitness. And if an athlete only has a tri bike and they hate riding it, they're going to ride it less. Okay. And you also see athletes just get on a tri bike, get a really terrible fit, and they end up being in so much pain or creating so many, so much tension and tightness on the parts of their bodies that shows up on their run, and then impedes their run progress. So I'm all about that advice that you gave. The guy on Friday was like, to Jerome, was like, if you're comfortable, keep riding, baby. And like, because so many people, especially in triathlon, they try to take care of the cake. They put a little bit of icing on top, and then they're trying to peck the sprinkles off top, and they ruin the whole thing just by trying to get fancy with it. And just do more and be consistent before you start to make these huge decisions, which I know they don't seem like it because it's just purchasing something, but it can change. Same thing happens with people who buy, go from a dumb trainer to buying a smart trainer. I've seen so many athletes for like the next month not know how to work it, not know how to figure it out. It locks up on them. And then I'm like, just do all the small details right that are easy, consistent, comfortable work that allow you to do it really often before you start to like veer off into purchase land.
I'm going to admit something. I don't even really know what a smart trainer offers, to be honest. Is it kind of that ERG mode thing?
It's a touchy subject, Michael.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, like,
listen, a smart trainer, and like I ride a smart trainer sometimes, but I don't use ERG mode. It basically locks your trainer into a resistance in a specific power number to allow you to do it. It makes it easier to do with Zwift and stuff like that, but you can do that with all of their bikes. Does it make it more fun? I think for some people, but I think the biggest inhibitor for people is when they lock it into a specific watt. Like we give ranges, and I think what people don't understand is like if you give somebody a range of like 200 to 240, then if you upload it to Zwift or Trainer Road or another platform, many times it picks the middle. Like, so instead of, if I give you a range of 200 to 240, it locks it into 220. Well, you might not have 220 that day, but you're going to be forced to try and turn your legs over to produce 220 when you could easily just do 200 or 201. I'm like, that doesn't sound very smart to me.
To me, it's all about understanding the ranges and being able to fluctuate around in there. And I was thinking about too is as you're riding, or running, all those times when, let's say you walk an aid station, for example, and you get your stuff and then you start running again. Think about like how many times you may slow down and then just like, oh, I got to pick it back up. And you try to pick it back up to, the pace you had instantly. And how many times throughout a race you're actually sort of quote unquote exploding versus easing back into that pace, and how much that may take out of you, those little things like that. And I think that's so important to, understand on the bike as well. And one of my big things is always, that's why I don't really like that ERG mode idea, is that I just think gearing is so important, man. You got to understand, like you have to be able to do it, reach up and do the gearing when you need to and be in the right gears, because that's the other thing is like sometimes 10 times throughout a race and you're in the wrong gear and all of a sudden you're going to have to pedal for 15, 20, 30, 40 seconds in the wrong gear.
You're late.
You're late. Can't be late. You have to be able to adjust your effort to that. Like if you're pounding up a hill and then you're in the wrong gear, you got to be able to kind of figure out how to pull back and not cramp, hammer it as hard. How do you ease your way up in the wrong gear? Things like that I think really matter throughout the course of a race.
Yeah, over the course of your trajectory as an athlete. Like start with the basics. So many people go out and buy the most expensive things ever that think they're going to like make training easier. It doesn't. It might seem like it makes training easier because it removes a lot of the thinking for you, but that's the problem, right? Like you need to figure things out on your own and learn about the sport, learn about your physiology, learn about training, learn about development. Start small with the basics. I know they don't seem very fun and you can't buy them. And a lot of people buy things just because they need something to make themselves feel good, but start with the basics. Like don't go out and just like buy new toys because you think, like, look in the mirror and think, do I know enough to make this purchase worthwhile? And do I have the attention span to then use this purchase further on to make it actually a huge benefit and not just something that's of convenience, right? Or to do something that's not really going to help me. Like figure out the basics, because I have seen, and people can riff on it as much as they want to, but I'm not on Facebook more, so I won't see it, is in the last 2 years, I've
leaving me on an island.
It's
out
fine.
there.
It's I've never in my life, more so than the last year or two, seen more athletes not fully understand how their bike even works, how to shift, what goes where, what does what gearing they need, how to even change gears, because they drop 6K on a tri bike, they drop a K in a smart chain that stops and does basically everything for them. They don't even know what chain rings they use. They don't know what gearing, the cassette they have. They don't even know what like the course map looks like. They don't know how to, again, like don't be late with shifting, be ahead of it. Like, shift to where you're about to go, not where you are, because that's how you see people drop. Like, again, you'll be up in Wisconsin in 2 weeks. You see more drop chains. Louisville was the same way with all the courses that have these like very frequent downhills, uphills, short pinchers, turns. You're shifting all day long, all day long. If you aren't prepared and you don't know, and here's the other thing that you can't replicate, and you can try to replicate it on what you see, because, well, the trainer will increase my resistance based on Rivet and Zwift. I'm like, yeah. Do you know what the difference is in like going outside, seeing a hill, right? Seeing it with your eyes, because you've seen that same hill, or you've seen many hills, and you ride outside and you get plenty of time in the saddle. You know what you need to do. You instinctively like, all right, downshift twice, upshift twice. 10 to 15 meters before you even get there. Like those things not only save time and energy, but they also really limit the opportunity for your chain to drop. You get stuck in the wrong gear. Like you just see this all the time with athletes that just don't fully understand how to use the $8,000 piece of equipment that they purchased. Same goes for power meters. Like a lot of people don't use their power meter correctly. It's like a very expensive cat eye, like cyclometer. It's like it's purchasing something isn't going to make you better. It's how you use it. And that same thing, I guess, going back to road bike versus tri bike and really anything. Like it's just, and I have this conversation a lot with athletes, but just with Training Peaks and like all the different graphs and fields they provide, I'm like, just because it's provided doesn't mean it's a benefit, right? Doesn't mean it's better for you. Doesn't mean it's something you need to obsess about. But we now becomes like you can buy so many things and you can look at so many things and you can pick through so many different data fields. It's like what? Like some of the best athletes I know on the planet in their sport, what they use? A spreadsheet, right? They put their effort in, they put their RP in. A lot of coaches that work with Olympic athletes do the same thing. They prescribe their sessions, the coach does all the work, the athlete just puts stuff in. Just start with the basics and make it like it is. There is nothing wrong with feeling like a rookie and learning like a rookie, because that's what allows you to make the mistakes, learn from them, and become a seasoned veteran, not just drop in, make purchases, and assume you know everything. There's just so much to be said for experience and experiencing like what it's like to shift, what it's like to feel a certain way on a run, whether it's to feel bad, like all these things. You should, again, we talk about this all the time, is like not putting yourself in dangerous situations, but putting yourself out there in situations that aren't ideal to learn how to learn ways in order to deal with obstacles. Because guess what? That's what's going to happen on race day. Something is going to happen, and you need to be able to go back and think through that. So if you're out there and you're thinking about buying something for this year or this next year, and again, like there's also like the chicken for the egg thing is like, if you're, buying a new bike, if it excites you, then that's fine, and if it's good, because if it's going to make you ride your bike more, then that's a good thing. Right. But make sure it fits, make sure it's just not something that you're trying to fill a void with another part of your life by making a purchase. Or like, listen, 99% of athletes make purchases when they've either had a bad race or they're unmotivated. That is 99% of all purchase from triathletes is you're either unmotivated or you just had a bad race. You know what I need? I need this. No, probably just go back first and look at your training and see what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong, and have kind of you said this, I remember back in this, like I'm not getting a new bike until I convince myself I can ride my bike enough to where it'll matter. Right. And a lot of people don't do that with running and with swimming. Like I'm going to do this. I'm like, then first off, make sure you can do something well enough, or not well enough, consistent enough to then going for the icing really, really matters, right? It'll make a huge difference in the cake, but it's always about the cake. Make sure you have the cake first and not just trying to go for the icing, because, while icing is good, it only tastes good for like a second.
You always talk about execution. We talk about execution. And when we think about things like bikes that might make us faster, or how do we get faster on the run, and, what does that mean for a lot of people? And I don't know if it means I feel like a lot of people think that getting faster on the run is their top end. You know, it's like, I can't, hit, whatever 650s anymore on my, sprint intervals or whatever. But when you think about execution, and this is what I've been thinking about a lot, it's like, I don't feel like I'm really getting slower. I certainly don't have the top end maybe that I had, back in the day. But now all I'm thinking about is that what you're talking about, putting yourself in situations that might be a little bit, uncomfortable or whatever, and then really focusing on things like pacing and understanding effort and how I can translate that more. Like, for example, this was out running on the chat run course, and as we know, that's a tough run course for Ironman. It's a hilly, challenging run course, and thinking about things like when are opportunities to maybe gain. Like, one of the things I was thinking about yesterday is like, man, where do you, it's kind of hard to make up time on this course, if you can't, because there's a lot of slow, long climbs and things like that. And it's like, man, if you have certain goals in your head, you got to figure out ways to maybe, adjust in different places and things like that, or how you're going to handle the flats versus the hills. And maybe you pick up a little speed there. And it's not that top end speed. It's just like, releasing your effort and letting your effort stay the same, but trusting that maybe you're going a little bit faster on certain sections and things like that. And those things to me are the gold in Ironman racing or long course racing in general, is that we go out there sometimes with this idea of having a pace in our head and trying to hold that pace for the whole race. I think that's how you think about it when you get into the sport. A lot of times is like, I got to keep this pace. I got to hold this pace for no matter what. But the terrain will dictate a lot of things. And are you willing to, or ready to take advantage of certain sections? Maybe trust yourself to go a little bit faster than, that goal pace here and there. And how are you going to handle the whole course? And so those are the things that I really think about and I work on as I'm trying to get ready for this race. And, it's just such a mystery sometimes, and plus, how are you going to handle that mentally when you're deep in fatigue 4 weeks away from the race versus how can that change on race day? So mentally, do you trust the fact that you might feel a little fresher on that day?
Should you trust it?
Yeah. I mean, but how are you going to do it? How do you mentally get your head in that space? It's like, without being depressed and bummed out right now because you might not have had the run that you hope to have or whatever.
Man, I think you just need to have a general, which again, it's different because you usually see two different kinds of athletes in training. You see, or when you look up on, like I have this conversation, but I read this comment in an athlete who's getting ready for Ironman California and 70.3 World Championships in St. George. And she was saying, like, I felt really good about my weekend, and I mean, she did like 95 miles on Saturday. And she was like, but I saw a bunch of my friends getting around California. They were doing like 100+ mile rides. And I kind of felt like I wasn't doing enough. And then I remembered what you said and I've been listening to the podcast a lot. And I was like, that's not my process. That's theirs. They don't do nearly as much work as I do during the week. And so you typically see, like those two different types of athletes, the athlete who usually works out 7 days a week. They over the course of a month, they probably take 1 or 2 days off, sometimes 0, days off. They're accumulating volume. They're doing things week to week to week to week, kind of like, lifted up the curtain a little bit last week in terms of like, athletes who have run like so much miles over the span of like 4 to 5 days, and then you see the athlete who goes off and like highlights the one long run that they did, and then they don't do much of anything for the next 3 or 4 days. Like, so you see athletes that like that show up on training, and that's what happens. And it's such like a different approach in psychology, because you take what I would consider like the weekend warriors that do these like insanely long bricks and stuff, where they do it on, fresh legs, quote unquote, fresher legs, I would imagine. But they just kind of have the fitness that they have. And they show up on race day with these expectations because they've probably done, 6,112 mile bike rides, with like 10-mile 10-mile bricks. They've probably done 3-hour, 3.5-hour, 20-mile long runs, 25-mile runs. They maybe have done like a whole 26-mile run before. And they're like, I'm going to hold this on race day. I'm going to do this all, meanwhile, you don't see many of them doing any 2.4 mile swims within you're riding the bike and people just, undertrain the swim.
Exactly.
But so they expect to have this overall expectation of what their individual discipline should equate to on race day. And then 9 times out of 10 are just ridiculously disappointed when it doesn't all add up. And then you take athletes that train 7 days a week, 30 days out of the month, for months and months and months and months. They're likely never going to have these huge breakout days because they don't, that's not the point. The breakout day we want is on race day. So they're accumulating all this time and all this volume and all this intensity for one day. Their one day isn't the one day of the week they do their big day, right? And so it's hard for those athletes to trust that it's going to add up, that it's going to materialize. And, a lot of times we make the reference in going to the bank every day and put some money in. Go in the bank. You don't see and not checking your bank account, not checking the balance. And you go back, put it in. Then you're also gaining interest right on it each day. You just go back every day. You don't withdraw. It's the weekend warrior is what I would consider the paycheck spender. Kind of like most of us were in college. You get a paycheck, what do? Cash it, spend it, move on to the next one. That's how I would say 70 to 80% of 70.3 Ironman athletes do is they're paycheck athletes. They race and they train paycheck to paycheck. They do their training, they cash their paycheck on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they start over again. And then they expect to see, their fitness savings account really be redeemed on this one big day. Well, it's not, because they're not going to have everything saved. And that's the other end of the spectrum. You have athletes that, again, just go to the bank, make deposit after deposit after deposit. We're not into checking our bank account. We're not into, spending or transferring or withdrawing and then reinvesting in new stock. It's just quietly get it done. Then all of a sudden, at the end of the year, you come in and you're like, oh, there's a comment in there. This is looking pretty good. I'm ready to go spend it, baby, on one day. And that's what you do. And then the nice thing is you get back out, working out 2 weeks later, and you're like, I still got a pretty good balance going in there. I didn't spend it all that I thought and that's the difference in feeling and trusting. But that's why you see athletes who are super, super consistent to put a lot of volume in, be able to actually race better than they've been training, is because when you're that consistent, you do that much kind of work, you're just not going to see it. You might have glimpses, and when you're kind of going through your last 2 or 3 week block of big training, a lot of times I'll sneak in maybe 2 or 3 really, really, really light days to kind of unload a little bit so that you can kind of see a glimmer of what's really there. But the biggest part is that you as a coach, and sometimes I have to remind athletes this, is that you're a triathlete. You're not a swimmer. You're not a cyclist. You're not a runner. You're competing and participating in the sport of triathlon, which is very, very, very different than trying to combine 3 separate disciplines and train them that way and then expect to, copy and paste a swim time, a bike time, and a run time into the day. It's about total time and the demands of what you need to have on race day, and especially on specific courses, are so different than, even just taking the demands of an Ironman Florida to the demands of a Wisconsin, totally different, totally different ball game. You have to be, and that's why training a specific way for a specific race, to be a kind of person and a kind of athlete that can endure that day and do well that day, is specific. And it's just not about mileage and accumulation for that week. It's about how you do it. It's about the intensity that you do it. And it's about how you stack things together. And you just, that's why honestly, you should be surprised on race day. And you should see a couple surprises in there, with workouts. I just didn't expect to feel that great, and those are the good days. The other days, like you said, you're just kind of they're in that 80% middle. They're kind of just kind of got it done today. And then you unload it all, right? You take 2 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks, whatever it is, to let all that fatigue subside. And then you get to go out on just one day and get after it. And you're like, God, I feel like a Superman. Like, and obviously, like things have to go well and line up well, and it has to be like, your day. But that's where your fitness should show. It shouldn't show any sooner. It shouldn't show up 2 weeks beforehand. It shouldn't even really show in like your last big workouts. You should just kind of see what you should write. And this is what you hope to see as a coach is like, man, under all the fatigue that I know I'm under, like, putting in a 35, 40, 45, 50 mile an hour run week, you're like, I'm really, really happy with how I ran today, considering all of that and the heat that you're in. And then the next thing is like, you wake up the next morning and you're like, I kind of can't believe I'm not that sore.
That's what I was just going to say.
And that's when it's going the way you want it to go.
Yeah. I love the weekend warrior and the bank analogy because it really is. It's more like people that try to put in those huge weekends, the bricks and the whole 9 yards. And that's more like just proving to yourself that you can do it, I think, mentality versus trusting that anything can happen that day. Like you like that. I love what you said about being kind of surprised. I think that's what we're looking for, right? Is this idea that, well, and a lot of people, as we said, have trained for Ironman Chattanooga, for example, or Wisconsin, any of these late season races for 2 years now. That's a lot of training if you've been consistent. And now to me, it's all about like, look, we don't need to go put in like crazy hours just to show that you're ready. I mean, just get your body in a position where it has the potential to do something amazing and get fresh and get recovered and get rid of that fatigue and then let your body go. I mean, because you've done it all. I mean, you've covered the distance like in training a zillion times over the last 2 years. I mean, like in the mileage and the hours you've put in, and it's like, you can do it. I mean, I know it's still hard to believe for first timers because I've been there. I get it. I remember it. You're like, man, I've never done this in one day, but it's just it's incredible. I remember my first time when running that marathon, I kept hearing, I was just kind of new in the sport and I kept hearing about the marathon bonk, like everybody bonks at mile 18 or 20 or whatever it is. And I was mentally going, man, when is that going to happen? Well, my bonk came on mile 1 actually, but I had to just force my way through it. But yeah, it's a lesson in faith and trust. I mean, really, it's just like you put all these miles on top of each other and all these hours and hours and hours, and just be patient. You don't go out and try and prove that you can do Ironman 3 weeks before you actually do one. Oh, God. Because a lot of people will do that. A lot of people want to just show that they can do it. I don't, I do understand it because it's human nature, I guess, to think that way. But a lot of people don't. When I talk to just friends or whatever, and I try to explain how we train for these things, but we never even come real close to doing it on one day. How do you do that? Well, it's just because you build that up over time and you work out on tired legs and fatigued bodies and things like that. And you do see glimpses of it. And those are the things you should pay attention to. I saw it yesterday on a long run, towards the end. I was like, I don't feel too bad. And that to me was like, enough.
Plenty. Yes. Yeah. Like I had an athlete text me on Saturday. And it was like, man, I just rocked 100 miles. I was tempted to go at least 20 more because I felt incredible, but I didn't. And I was like, good. Like that's how you should feel. They're not, but then again, they're not all going to feel like that. Like,
no.
Because so many things, especially right now, have to line up with stress and fatigue and temperatures and fueling and how you did the night before. Like, in order to just feel like you can have that kind of the day, it all has to line up. And again, that's another thing you have to, really, really take into account is, what is the other aspect? What are the other aspects of your life dictating, with stress and sleep and nutrition and how are you taking care of yourself? And because those all have a huge impact on your performance, not just in the race, but in training. And then it's also, I think, a really great reminder to, if you find yourself having to, you're a week to 3 to 4 weeks out from your big race and you got to take some time off because you're sick or you got a niggle or an injury or anything. And it doesn't apply to everybody because not everybody is consistent, but like if you've been consistent the whole year and all of last year, for the most part, and done some really, really, really good work, then just relax the last two, not relaxed, just, don't take it seriously, but like if you're worried about losing fitness or you're having to take time off of one specific sport because you can't do something or the pool's closed for a week or you can't run for a week, it was like, just chill the F out. It's a week, okay? Relax. Honestly, if anything, it might do your body good, right? To take some extra time because you want a little bit extra in the tank, in the reserve tank on race day. So don't look back at just the last week and be a prisoner of the moment of the one red in Training Peaks you have or that one long run you missed. Go back and look at the percentage of how many long runs you made over the course of the last 30 to 40 to 50 weeks. Now, that doesn't necessarily apply if you're a person who's skipped, every long run or most of your long runs, for the whole month. That doesn't apply to you really. So you probably should freak out. But for most of you, you're probably super consistent. You've hit, 90% of your long runs over the course of the year. Relax. It's just one, right? It's just one. Which again is like going back to a comment I made earlier, was like, this athlete was like, yeah, it wasn't a great week. It wasn't this or wasn't that. I was like, dude, like when you're as consistent as you are and you always have been, like, who cares? Like it literally will do nothing to hurt you. It just is what it is. And that's also the beauty of being consistent and being engaged in some form or fashion on a year-round basis is that if you do miss a week or two, who cares? Because you're so consistent, you're not going to lose a drop of fitness versus, and that's why, like, people always ask, like, how much do your athletes work out? How much do you, I'm like, when I say year-round basis, we're not trying to peak year-round. We just have some kind of structure for the most part, except for like, November, December, some kind of loose structure. But the beauty and the not the privilege, but the convenience of being consistent is that when you end up getting in like your 8 to 10 to 12 week final block, you have wiggle room versus because you've been so consistent the whole year. The person who is coming into it from like, just procrastinating their way all the way through, their crunch time is very finite. Like they can't miss anything. So if they do miss something, it does matter. But if you're a person who's been consistent, again, like that's the beauty of consistent, solid hard work, is that the missed days are just missed days. They're not steps backwards. They're just, you kind of hang out or maybe take a step forward from getting, a little bit extra rest, but relax, just chill out and get your mind right. And honestly, the closer you get to the race, the one thing you should be focusing on is where things are from the chin up. Where is your head at? Where is your, not your motivation, but where is your focus at? And are you ready and willing to go where you need to go to have your best race on race day, not already being on the defensive before you even put your goggles on.
Yeah. And not being too stressed about it. I think if you can somehow figure, I think that's it, is, how do we spin that in? And I've been fortunate enough to kind of be able to do that right now, where I feel like excited about it, and it's not a stressor out there as much as it is. I kind of can't wait. I'm building up and feeling pretty decent, and now I'm looking forward to it. I'm not stressing that I can't do it or anything like that. And I think most people, especially if you've done it, you kind of know, what it takes, sort of like you can kind of pull it together. And it's such a weird thing, though. I mean, like, I feel like I could do it now. That was kind of what I got into my head yesterday. I was like, I could probably do this. I feel pretty decent about completing it. But now I have been a little bit in the crammer category, so it's pretty crucial for what I'm doing right now to stay consistent. But
you're used to that.
But I'm used to it, yeah. And again, wow, man, if you've been doing all this work and you feel good right now, it's like people will say, I don't really feel that fatigued, and they've been doing a lot of work. And I just keep going, that's great, man, because, I mean, isn't that really what it is all about? You don't want to feel beat down. If you're putting in good work and you're controlling your efforts, and, I think, again, that the top end or the pointy end of age groupers and, that are really going for those minutes, those differences and how they can, and as they get better and better at practicing, like holding long intervals and just they really start owning that. I always talk about own where you're at. I think we had a podcast called that, but it's sort of like until you really do own this spot, there's no sense in really trying to push yourself further, because that can create burnout and like fatigue and just like general like disinterest in the sport. If you're trying to push, it's that whole thing about trying to hit too high of power numbers all the time. What's the point in that? I mean, just get strong at this level and then we'll inch you up and go to the next one or whatever. But if you're not going for the podium kind of thing, you really just need to be focused on feeling good, feeling strong, feeling confident, and understanding that you're not going to try and do something you're not capable of on race day, because that's where the problem comes in. We have to accept who we are, or else you're going to be in for a world of hurt.
Race with the horse you trained on.
There you go.
I think we have a podcast entitled that, right? It's
yeah.
like that's like the number one, and just be confident in that. And like what you said about
takes so much pressure off
being,
if you're not trying to be the tri-calc person.
Being like, listen, if you're in an Ironman build and you're healthy and you're generally happy, again, you're not gonna be all the way happy because life and eating and napping and sleeping, all that kind of stuff. But the two, like when you as a coach, like I read this twice, and again, Training Peaks this morning, for two athletes that have gone through their very first Ironman build together, and they had previous coaches, was I've never felt this healthy in an Ironman build. Like for whatever reason, like training for an Ironman has become this like, you need to feel like trash. You need to feel beat down. You need to puke in your workouts. You need to grind your way through these super life, dude. Shut up. That's not how it's supposed to be. Exactly. We get enough of that in life, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
just trying to make it through the effing day.
From working all day.
If you didn't puke,
your head doesn't hurt. If you don't have headaches,
you're like, just shut your effing mouth. Like, I work 65 hours a week, and I'm like, well, congratulations. That must suck, right? Like, that's not a like pat on the back. Like, you shouldn't be driving yourself into the ground and then expect your body to just miraculously appear fresh, fit, and ready to go on race day. Ain't gonna happen. I said this a lot, and I said this, I think, to end last week's podcast, was like, treat your body right, and it'll treat you right. And that's what you want on racing. If you're in your like last big build and you're just crushing yourself, you're killing yourself, I'm grinding away, you're not doing your body any favors. Like, instead of, because yes, do you need to, quote unquote, beat your body down to a specific point so it'll rebuild itself? Sure. But there's a difference in giving your body a fender bender and totaling your body. And most athletes in an Ironman build absolutely total their body in training. And then they wonder why it shows up on race day and acts like a 1974 Pinto instead of a freaking Ferrari. Like, you want it to be, treat it right. Get the oil changed, wash it, clean it, wax it, park in the garage, like treat it like it's a champion. Don't beat it to death and expect it to just, be fine. Like the same things, like you don't want to take there's certain cars you don't want to take on a road trip, and certain cars you do want to take on a road trip. Understand the horse that you trained on, and just accept it. Like, the best thing you can do outside of, it's never too late to not change up your training, but to treat your body a little bit better, right? But leading up to the race, because the most important thing to do is to show up fit, fresh, and healthy on race day. I totally lost my train of thought. I was going to say the most important thing you can do. Oh, is to just accept where you are, because that's going to allow you to at least have a level of fun on race day and to smile. It's because you're not expecting to be someone different or disappointed or frustrated or ashamed that you're not who you thought you were going to be 8 months ago when your life was, total 180 degrees different. Just be happy and smile and just be very, very thankful. You even get to line up to race and you made it this far and you did enough training to feel confident enough to show up on race day. Like, get that through your head before you even step on race side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you have realistic expectations on that day, that takes so much pressure off you. And I've seen it happen a lot. I love it when, some people are kind of doing their first and they're like, I'm thinking somewhere between 13 and 15 hours is kind of my goal. And I'm like, wow, that takes a lot of, humbleness or something to say that I'm cool with 13 to 15. So if you got 15 on the top end and you're like, okay, you kind of almost positive you can do that, right? Based on what you're training. So maybe you end up in the middle, and then maybe you get to mile 18 of that run and you're like, whoa, I did this pretty well. Let's see what I got or whatever. And I think, again, you know, we always talk about the last, you know, 10K or 8 miles of the run, but really it does just boil down to that, right? That's going to be the make or break between your 13 and 15 hour kind of goal. It's like, is it going to be 14 or is it going to be 13:45, you know? But to go into it with the idea that you know you can hit what you're going to hit, you know, like with me, I always go, I'm going to do the hour swim. And then I get out in hour 15 and that just like gets in my head. That's not a good place to be, because then it's like, okay, 15 minutes, where am I going to get that on the bike? And then you start doing all that whole thing and it just becomes a nightmare. And so I just think that the realistic goal, not only what it does is take pressure off, but I think it helps you race better. And as you unfold that day, you know, we talked about last time, is like, let your body wake up. And as you get into it, you might be like, you know, if you have a good idea of your feel and your effort and things like that, you might be like, you know, I feel a little bit better than I thought I might at this point, but I held back well enough, or I was patient enough early that you can maybe, you know, add on a little bit. But to try to shoot for that low end right out of the gate is just like a recipe for disaster, I think, for most people.
The low end, you mean, isn't like the faster end?
Yeah, like your ultimate potential time.
Whenever I go out for like a long run, and if I'm like have like a range, I think I should stay in, you know, let's say it's like, I think, you know, today, you know, I'll go out by field, but I kind of have a general idea, because I'll look at my watch every case and I'm like 8 to 9 minutes or 7 to 8 minutes. I always start at like 8:59. And then hang out there for a while. And then like that's honestly, I think it's like it's an engaging, really fun game, you know, fun being the relative term here.
Yeah. For
athletes to use is like, you know, pick a pace and then every mile try to go down. So like I'll do like 8:59 and then I'm like, all right, 8:52 and then 8:43. And then sometimes you only see like 8:32 because I'm like, maybe that jump from 8:50 to 8:43 was a little bit too much too quick. So instead of jumping from like, you know, 8:43 to 8:30, I went from 8:43 to 8:42. That's still negative split, but what I also showed was restraint and understanding that maybe that previous mile, maybe it was a little bit too much too soon. But I can correct that, right, by just making it basically not going any faster at all, but just by barely a second, and then just try to work your way down all the way till you get to the end. It's just, I think it's a great progression and a great skill, again, for athletes to learn, is that progressive negative split, teaching your body, learning your body, seeing what things feel like, and being able to pace it, because it is a skill. It's something that has to be practiced. And you're usually done. You're like, man, that was a good run. Like, because if it's a 2 hour run, you spent the first hour just kind of like go and chill. And then you felt like, if you want to gain confidence, you gain confidence by doing workouts where you feel stronger at the end, not to where you crumble at the end or bonk at the end, which is what a lot of athletes do this time of year.
Yeah. And we talk about this all the time, but like, it's interesting when you get out on that course and you just find that lock it in pace, that all day pace, like you're talking about. I think a lot of times negative splits can kind of happen naturally that way too. If you just kind of run at a pace and let your body warm up as it keeps going, you know, you just naturally kind of just flow better. I think if you're not pushing it too hard, and you just might pick up those 5 seconds a mile, 10 seconds a mile here and there, just naturally without even trying. And I think that's a really good way to go about it. And like you said, if you're in a race and you feel like this feels about right, that probably means you want to pull back just a hair.
Exactly. Yep. If you're racing on the bike and you're like, this feels just about right, you're going too fast. If it feels too slow, it's just about right. And we hope this podcast was just about right as we hit the 1 hour mark. Hope you enjoy today's cast. We always love hopping in on Monday and getting our week started off like this. If you haven't and want to go back, or just, you know, check it out in general, go to our website, C26Triathlon.com, and is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. And also our hub visits, and you can go on that. And if you have any questions about hub visits, swim analysis, or our camps, you can reach out to Summer. She's at C26operations@gmail.com. If you have any questions for Mike, he is always at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me specifically, I'm at C26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy.
See you.
Talk to you later.